Okay. Got it. Okay. It's here.
You're all good to go whenever you want.
Okay. Everybody, my name is Dr. Missy. I am the director and founder of the DANIA Beach Vervet project, and I'm also a visiting professor of science at Lynn University. I gave the talk, a monkey talk to the South Florida Wildlife Center. I can't remember if it was 2017 or 18, and I was finishing up my dissertation, and I finished in 2019, and I've continued on with the monkeys. I got attached, and I'll talk a little bit about that and why I continued on with the monkey project. But this is a picture of me here from 2014 when I first started working with the monkeys. So I got attached and I never left. All righty, let's see. I'm trying to get my screen here to move forward. All righty, great. So the things I'm going to talk about today are specifically what is a vervet monkey. People always ask that. When you say the term vervet, people have no idea what it is, which makes sense. We don't typically have monkeys running around in the United States. You're not familiar with that. And I want to touch on a little bit about the history of population. I feel like it's been in the news a lot, and we've also posted on our social media, but I like to revisit that because I think it's really an interesting part of their history. It's, very much, gosh, it was back in the 40s, and it's like the Wild West, out here, but I consider Florida the East Coast Wild West with all the pets and everything. Talk about the research that I did as a graduate student and the current research that we have going on now. And then lastly, I want to expand on our nonprofit and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then this is my little friend, Mikey. He was one of the first monkeys I met out in the parking lot, and I've known him since 2014, and he's getting up there in his age. So it's always fun just to follow the monkeys over the years and see how they change as individuals and watch babies grow up and have babies. So it's interesting just to be kind of assimilated into their little group there. All right, so what is a vervet monkey? Vervet monkeys come from Africa. There are 6 different species, and the monkeys we have here in Dania Beach come from the west coast of Africa. They're considered green monkeys, and if you look at the picture here, it's because they have that greenish hue almost to their hair. And when they're in their trees, they're very hard to see. They blend in very well. The only time I can really tell if they're there, if they're not moving, is because they have this long tail that looks like it was dipped in gold at the end. And I'll see those wagging around, and I know that's the monkey. They're highly adaptable. So in Africa, they are commensal. They do really well with living in urban areas alongside people. And this becomes very problematic. They are considered nuisances in their endemic region. So people do horrible things to them. They shoot them, they poison them. And there's actually a couple rescues that I follow online that do help some of these injured animals and rehabilitate them and release them if they can. It's just sad just to see how they're treated, but it kind of goes along with this human, non-human interaction. I think as we see more development happen, we're going to see lots more, I think, of conflict with wildlife. They're omnivores, so they eat a wide variety of foods. However, the monkeys in Dania Beach have developed an appetite for sugar and salt. So this picture here, I took of Scar, and he was hoping that there were some gummies left here in this packet. They love packaged food. I've actually seen one of our female Snow White eat a whole pack of lemon heads. And she did not flinch. She put them in her cheek pouches and off they went. So I think they've been fed by humans since the 40s. So the last 80 years, it's just part of their culture to seek out humans for food, or at least know where people are. There's going to be some remnants of food. So they do like to fish around on the parking lots. If nobody's there, they'll certainly go through bags and that sort of thing, hoping to get some food. And they are picky. People say they feed them because they feel sorry for them because they're starving, and they're not. They live, in the mangroves. There's plenty of food there. And I know they're not starving because they have rejected lots of food items. One individual was offered a dried tomato. He sniffed it and threw it back at the person. So I tell people, I said, if they're not eating everything that you offer, they're not hungry, but they're just spoiled monkeys. The community loves them. And I've been out there since 2014. And I can see why, and you fall in love with them. And with that, they're very, very intelligent. So like I said, in the endemic regions, they get into trouble if you don't have your windows locked or your door locked. They'll figure out how to open it, and they've been known to ransack and raid people's homes. So for people who live in areas where you would naturally find this type of monkey, they tend to monkey proof their homes, right? So it's very much like us having to raccoon proof our trash cans. It's the same thing for the monkeys here. So, alrighty, so these are the different species that I had mentioned, and these are the variations of vervets that you will see. And this here is what we have here in Dania Beach. This is the green monkey, and you can see the difference if you look at the patterns of hair and almost the color. Here, for our Dania Beach monkeys, their brow band isn't as pronounced. If you look here, you see a nice white thick band here, and here, and here, and here. And then this little fellow is very unusual. He's actually one of my favorite vervet monkeys, apart from ours. Don't tell them I said that. But they're a bale monkey, and they are in this smallest region of Africa, and I believe they have been listed by the IUCN as threatened. And once again, it just comes back to their habitat loss and that sort of thing. But this is ours here in Dania Beach, our green monkeys, and this is really a great image here. All right, so how did I get involved? I did not seek out the monkeys. I didn't know about the monkeys. I was a PhD student in the integrative biology program at Florida Atlantic, and I was going to go to Gombe National Park to study hybrid monkeys. So there are red monkeys and blue monkeys that are interbreeding, and I was very curious about that. And it was just through a random conversation with a woman in our lab, Liz, who was a local Floridian, and she said, there are monkeys in Florida and they're near the airport. And I said, there's no way. I'm not from Florida, I'm from California, but now, like I said, I've been out here, working with wildlife and other organizations. I realized that exotic pets are a big thing here. So, I shouldn't be surprised now when I hear about exotic pets being released or escaping and being kind of found in the landscape here. But this is the first time I saw them, and I saved this photo because this was really what started it all. And this monkey's name is Aurora. And I went to one of the parking lots where I found through Google search where these animals were. And I went to the back and the monkeys came out, and I was very overwhelmed. I have never seen a monkey just free roaming through an urban space or a parking lot, and they came right up to me. And it was very surreal. And I was hooked. I immediately called my advisor and I said, you know what, there really are monkeys out there. And she said, well, maybe you should do that for your studies instead of going to Africa. I'm a mom and a wife, and I was going to have to juggle going back and forth. So it was really just serendipitous that these monkeys came into my life, and it's worked out wonderfully. But this is Aurora. She eventually passed away. She was an older monkey, and she showed up one day on the lot with a very serious leg wound, and we didn't see her after that. So I suspect she died of some kind of infection associated with that wound. Alrighty. I feel like my mouse is not wanting to. Alrighty, there we go. So obviously, once I ran into these monkeys in the parking lot, I really had so many questions. First, how do monkeys get here in Florida? Why are monkeys running around? What kind of monkeys did I just see? How many are there? So my head was full of all these questions. So it actually was a great spot to start my research. And I was really curious too, what do people think about monkeys? Having monkeys in the parking lot, or if you live down in South Dania, having monkeys near your homes. I really just knew from reading the literature that some monkeys are considered pest primates, and I didn't know if the vervets here in Dania would fall under that particular category as a pest. So the first thing I did, I wanted to go back and see if any other scientists have completed any peer-reviewed articles. And the only article that I found was by Bill Heiler, and it was in the Florida Scientist, and it was published in 1995. And he was an FAU student, an undergraduate, and he completed his senior year thesis on studying these monkeys. It was great. I reached out to him, and him and I chatted about his experiences and then what I was finding. So he has been a really great connection to tie all my research together over the years. And what's really interesting to note, so in 1995, when he published his work, he recorded 36 monkeys between two social groups that were in Westlake Park. So the map here is of South Florida, and this is the airport for reference, and this is the Port Everglades over here. And then inside this red circle is Westlake Park. It's about 1,500 acres of mangrove space. And the X here is one of the social groups that Bill Hyler recorded, and also the one here. So this is back behind the Motel 6, if you guys are familiar with that space off of Dania Beach Boulevard. And then over here, this is the marinas that you'll see that are north of the canal. So these are the two groups that he recorded in all of that 1,500 acres. So I thought that was really interesting. So knowing how adaptable vervets are and that they do well in urban environments, I was really expecting to find more monkeys than I did when I first started. So you'll see how it turned out. But first, let's talk about how they get here. This is what I think is the really interesting part of their story. So it was really difficult to trace things back. Even Hyler had difficulty nailing down exactly how those monkeys got here. And I did lots and lots of research. I interviewed community members in Dania Beach, and I ended up getting in contact with a gentleman who shared a documentary with me, and also ran across something called the Anthropoid Ape Research Center. And this was opened in the 1940s by Layla Roosevelt and her husband, Armand Dennis. And they were importing primates in from Africa to be used in the biomedical trade. And this was open, like I said, in 1944. It was later on sold in 1951. I did talk to someone who worked there. Her mother actually ended up buying the Anthropoid Ape Research Center and turned it into the Dania chimpanzee farm. And the Ash family is the family that bought that space. So after that, it was basically like a trading post, and to offset the costs of having these animals on site, they opened it up like a zoological facility so locals could come in and see the animals. However, at the same time, primates were still being used for biomedical industry. And the story goes that there was an aviary of vervet monkeys of about 50. And either the zookeeper forgot to latch it or the monkeys opened it, which I think it was a very simple eye hook latch with a spring. You just pull back on the spring and the door will pop open. So I figure the monkeys watched and waited and took the right moment and escaped. They got all the monkeys back except for 12 to 15. So the monkeys that we have in Dania descend from that original group of 12 to 15 that escaped. Eventually, the Dania chimpanzee farm was shut down. FPL bought the land. So today, if you are on US 1 and you're heading south, right before you go over the cutoff canal, if you look to the left, you'll see a bunch of towers. And that's where the Dania chimpanzee farm was. The family did try to relocate and open up a new facility in Lake Wales, but from what I gather, it didn't work out too well. All righty. So, like I said, one of the questions I had were, how did the monkeys get here, and what is the exact type of monkey that we're dealing with? Just looking at them, physically looking at their phenotypic traits, they did have the green monkey traits, that long tail with a gold tip in the back. You could see that here, the very narrow brow band, and the color of the hair here is the greenish tint. So they phenotypically were matching West African species, but we wanted to be sure. So we ran some genetics on them. We collected poop opportunistically, and then some of the animals that had been hit by cars, we collected their remains and were able to use some of their tissues to extract some DNA. So we did use 3 different genetic markers. So we had the cytochrome B, and then we took 2 fragments from the Y chromosome. And when we got the genetics report back, we were very excited to see that indeed they were Chlorocebus sabaeus from West Africa. So it was great to see that the history, the oral history and the written history that I found in the local community matched up with the science that we had found. So it was really exciting for us. And we did have this study published in Primates in 2021. And it actually got a lot of news, which I thought was interesting, a lot of news attention. I think because we nailed down exactly where this monkey population came from, and we're able to trace the journey back from Dania into West Africa. So this is a huge find for us. So this was something that I worked on during my dissertation. And then also, like I said, well, what do people think about the monkeys? So like I mentioned, in their endemic regions in Africa, they're considered pest primates. You know, some people don't like them, and it's a really strong divide between people that like these type of monkeys and the people that don't. So what I decided to do was to anonymously poll the people here in South Florida. They were able to go online, complete a survey, and all I would get were the results. So I'll have to share that with you guys in a little bit. I can't see with my, I have to move this down. I can see better. Oh, okay, here we go. Whoops, sorry. Try to figure out a way so I can see my thing here at the bottom. Oh, there we go. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to organize. I'm not very good with my Zoom here. Okay. All right. So before we move into the statistics from the community survey, I just wanted to update you guys on the annual population census. Like I said, Hyler published in 95 that he found 36 individuals with only 2 social groups. So, and I really was expecting more when we started in January of 2014. But as you can see here, I only found 36 individuals. So I thought that was really interesting. So we had that, you know, notable time gap, and they were living in 1,500 acres of mangrove. I really thought there would have been more individuals than what we found. And that was one of the questions that I'm still working out, is why are there so few monkeys when they are really considered one of the top 3 type of monkey that do well. So we'll talk a little bit about that, my findings that I've had over the last few years. And these are just some examples of the census that I took annually every year. And as you can see, it peaked in 2016, then it started to drop off. And currently we're at 40 individuals. So the population is stable. It certainly is not growing or spreading out of the area. So we're not considering them invasive. They're just considered non-native right now. What I thought was interesting, though, I did some ecological modeling, and I was curious to see if the population would grow on the data that I collected. So I input birth rate, you input the ratio of adult males to adult females. So there's a lot of parameters that you enter into this software modeling system, and it predicts the outcome for the population. And it actually showed, based on the trends that we're seeing now, that the population might be extinct within the next 50 years, which I thought was really interesting. So there is something that's limiting their growth. We're just not quite sure of what it is, and we have a few ideas, and we're going to see how that works out to see if that makes sense for this population. So like I said, they're not invasive. The population isn't spreading or leaving out of the areas. We're seeing a neutral ecological presence in the mangroves. We haven't had any reports of property damage or aggression or anything like that. So like I said, they're just considered non-native for now. And also I'd like to mention that they're not carriers of herpes B. So the macaque monkeys at Silver Spring State Park, they carry herpes B naturally. So when I see a news story come out, I feel like it's always fear-mongering or just clickbait. Florida is overrun with herpes-ridden monkeys or something like that. And because people don't understand that there are different types of monkeys, they lump in the vervets with that and assume that the vervets have herpes B, and they don't. Matter of fact, if the vervets in DANIA were infected with herpes B, they would die just like you or I if they picked up this particular virus. So I'd like to always mention that just to let people know. So if you see it in the news, you can hopefully correct anybody who has misinformation about them. So like I said, I tested the community. I wanted to know, well, do you guys like the monkeys? I was very curious about this. So one of the questions that I did ask was, do you think the monkeys should receive protected status from the city or the state? And because they're non-native, they're not privy to a lot of protections. They're really only protected under the Animal Anti-Cruelty Act right now. So that lends itself into the expansion of my nonprofit. But as you can see, majority of people wanted the animals to receive actually official protected status. And I thought that was really interesting because I looked at the different backgrounds, different education levels. Are you affiliated with an animal rights group? Is it gender oriented? Is it income oriented? But it turned out across the board, regardless of the demographic, everyone felt consistently across the board that the animals should receive protected status. So I thought that was really interesting. And then the next slide is, how would you feel if the state tried to remove them? People said that is not going to work. As you can see, the red is showing no across the board. So once again, people want these animals protected and they do not want them removed, which I think is very interesting. And a lot of it comes back to the fact that they're not invasive. They're not out into people's neighborhoods or in the communities. They're not doing the things that we would see in endemic areas like Africa, where they're, they'll break into your car and that sort of thing. So luckily for them, I think because they're staying in the mangrove area and the population isn't growing, that the people don't perceive them to be a problem, which I think is great. It's great for them, keeps them protected. So after going through all of my dissertation work and being out there for so long, I realized that the monkeys were missing some welfare, and that was one of the big things. So for example, over the years of my dissertation research, I would see these animals that were injured and die from wounds that could be treated. However, because they're non-native, we can't trap, treat, and release. So it really was, they were just left out there to either recover on their own or they would pass away. And remarkably, we've had a few recover and make some fabulous comebacks, but yet we've lost plenty to wounds that I think could have definitely been treated. So it was difficult to see that, and it still is today when you see an injured animal, or if you hear about an animal being taken for the pet trade, or if they get hit by a car, it's really upsetting. So I started, the 501c3, and it ended up coming into two different avenues. So first was welfare. So that's something I'm very much interested in and addressing to help the animals. And secondly, maintaining a research presence out there. There's so many questions that we have about this population that are unanswered. So we're following these two different avenues within our nonprofit. So what is going on? This is what I realized was going on while I was out there. So people would talk about families coming on weekends or individuals coming down the road, and knowing the animal's routine or the fact that they would take human food, it really made them easy targets. So this is one of the animals that was recently confiscated from Miami. He was kept in a bird cage in the back patio. So yeah, they end up being taken for pets, and that's heartbreaking. This animal was confiscated because the gentleman did not have the proper permitting for him. And from what I was told, he was placed with someone who does have a Class 2 permit. We do have urban hazards. They get electrocuted or they get run over by cars. And so that's very sad to see that happen. And lastly, like I mentioned before, monkeys die from treatable wounds. So this here is Jill, and she did have an infant, and then she showed up at one of the parking lots without her infant, but with this wound here, and we couldn't figure out where she had gotten it or what happened to her infant. But eventually, over time, that wound became infected, and she did die from a systemic infection. So when I see something like this and I show it to a vet, he's like, oh yeah, this is something that we can easily treat and release the animal. It's heartbreaking to know that we can't do that legally. So that was something that stuck with me, and it's still pushing me and motivating me with my nonprofit. So like I said, the animals are non-native. And Florida and Fish and Wildlife will never, ever, ever naturalize the monkeys. I can never actually get them declared as a native Florida species. If you think about all the other non-natives that we have in the state of Florida, it really would just open up, a can of worms if we give native status to this animal, but not that animal. So it's very much a black and white issue within the FWC organization. It is illegal to trap them without a permit, and you can't actually be in possession of one without a permit. And obviously you can't release them because they're non-native. So because of these three rules that are in place, we're not able to trap, treat, and release the injured animals that we have documented over the years. So the current options in place legally today are, if we report an injured animal, they will euthanize it, or they will find a permitted person that agrees to take and treat the monkey. I found that most of the places in Florida that have the proper permits typically are part of the pet trade. And in my personal opinion, I don't think primates are pets, and I don't want the animals to be taken in and exploited for money. So both of those options I did not like. And I did look around at some other facilities such as legitimate sanctuaries that are registered, AZA accredited facilities, and they will not take them because they're non-native and they're not considered a threatened or endangered species. So right now, I know that a lot of zoos are pushing with funding for critically endangered and endangered animals. And the only place that would actually take a vervet would be a pet breeder or a lab facility. So they're really not in a good space because of their non-native status and the fact that they're not considered a threatened or vulnerable species. So I'm always thinking, what's the best thing to do to work around these types of labels that these animals have? So my idea was, well, alrighty, I'm always out with the monkeys. I know where the monkeys are. And I pursued Park and Fly and Hurt to lease the 16 acres of mangrove property that they own. They can't use it, they can't develop on it, but the monkeys live there. And this is where we were going to collect a lot of our data. So one day an idea popped into my head, well, what if I had my own space to take these animals if they're injured, or if the only option is to euthanize the animal or to send it to a class 2 person who might be permitted as a breeder. I thought at least I knew where the animal would be and would be able to provide the animal with quality care. And with that, we'd be able to get vet care for the animals. They would be protected. They wouldn't be vulnerable to the urban hazards. They would not be removed illegally for the pet trade, because I really don't think euthanasia is the right answer for all non-native problems. So I'm really hoping that we can get this up and running and do something positive to help out these monkeys. And these are some ideas that I had. So what I really want to do is on that acreage that we lease, have some nice size enclosures like this, and then we connect them through the mangroves with these walkways. And this is something that the Center for Great Apes has. And so the animals are able to move freely through the space, but they can't get out and people can't get to them. So it really is a brilliant idea. It allows the movement of the animals, but still protects them from all the things that we worry about. So when is it happening? So we broke ground. So we're starting only with one enclosure and it's over here. So this is just kind of the bare bones. And it's going to be a 10 by 20 enclosure. And the first monkey that we're going to take will be this animal here, Spock. He was actually trapped as a nuisance animal by one of the businesses on the port back in 2019 or 2020, I can't remember. And he is in Miami, and the gentleman that has him is a permitted person. And I reached out to him when I first heard Spock was trapped as a nuisance animal. And he said he'd gladly return Spock to us once we get our permit. So we're excited to have him home. His brother, Spike, is actually in the same area of the mangroves as part of the free ranging group. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Spock and Spike react to seeing each other after all this time has passed. So then what we thought we'd do, we're just going to add monkeys and enclosures as needed and with the funding. So it's nice to have money in the bank is one of my next goals. So if something happens and a dispersing male is trapped outside of the area, or if a monkey is severely injured and definitely needs medical intervention, we'll be able to take possession of that monkey and provide a safe home for it. So it's basically the last stop for any monkey at risk of euthanasia. So we're hoping that we're able to make this happen. So we're very excited that we actually have the funding in place for the first enclosure and it's getting built. And then hopefully we'll move forward with some fundraising and be able to create the second enclosure. So like I said, there is the research component of it. Since this is really an understudied population, there are so many questions that we want to explore about them. So this here is Charlene. She is a PhD student, and she's going to address this issue of why the population isn't growing. We actually think it's due to inbreeding. The males that are the residing alpha males in each social group have been there since they started in 2014. Under normal circumstances, males disperse and leave their social group when they reach the age of 5. And then they move from social group to social group, typically every 3 to 4 years. And this is a way for them to avoid reproducing with any of their offspring. Like I said, though, all the alpha males that we have out are currently the residing alpha male and have been since 2014. And a lot of their offspring have grown up to have their own offspring. So we do think there is some inbreeding going on, and that might be a limiting factor to the population growth. So Charlene's going to come on board and explore that for us. And then Aaron is here in the middle. He's our site manager. He has a 4-year degree in biology from FAU. And he just came back from studying vervet monkeys in South Africa, and he's getting ready to go to Puerto Rico to do some macaque research. And then over here, we have Sydney. She is a junior at Pinecrest in Fort Lauderdale. She's our first high school student to come aboard, and she's actually looking at how monkeys use the parking lot. So she set up a camera trap experiment to monitor the movement of the monkeys to see how much time they spend at each spot. And the woman here in the middle, her name is Carly. She's a master's student, and she is recording vocalizations of the vervets. We do know that vervets have alarm calls for different types of predators. We haven't seen any predation events in the mangroves, but they do make these unusual calls when they see a turtle or a bird. So she's looking to see if these animals have actually created a novel calling system, which I think would be pretty fascinating to see if they've created their own calls unique here to Dania Beach. And this here is this is Kat. She's a PhD student in environmental sciences at FAU. And she too was collecting vocalization data and has a nice record so far running, and Carly is going to take that over. Kat is actually going to go to Gombe to continue on her research. So this really is a great space for students to come and look at wild monkeys without having to go overseas. And we know now with COVID in place, it makes things a little bit more difficult. So it's amazing that we have a place like this for students that come and get legitimate field data, answer questions, and move the science forward with this population. So how can you help? You can donate on our website at vervetproject.org. You can support us on Amazon Smile, and please follow us on social media. A couple of local businesses have actually posted flyers with QR codes so people could scan and donate, or they can scan and it'll be routed to our social media. And then we started this little fun thing. It's called Where is Mikey? # Where is Mikey? And this is my son. So sometimes we'll take Mikey with us out if we go someplace, and we'll post on social media to help engage and create awareness about the local monkey population. And so it takes a village. So the community has been tremendously supportive of the nonprofit. A lot of the businesses have been very cooperative and helping us get access to the space and creating these leases for us. You know, Park and Fly and Hertz have been tremendous for that. The students coming in to do research have provided an excellent support system as well. They're contributing to the nonprofit, specifically to the research space. And we've had a lot of friends donating their professional skills. So for example, my neighbor across the street, Julie, was the one that helped negotiate the Hertz lease for us through their executive team. And then I always say tolerant family, because I'm gone in the mornings and then I'll be gone at night, and normally I'm out with the monkeys. So my son always says, I think you like the monkeys more than me. So he's funny that way. But the monkeys are very busy in the morning and they're very active at night. So if you were to go out during the day, you wouldn't see them. So this is why I've adopted these unusual behaviors, I guess. And also, you know, everyone loves the monkeys. I love the monkeys. I've got to know them as individuals over the years. So this has really become to a place where I want to make a difference for them, just because I know them as individuals, and seeing these animals get hurt or perhaps caught for the pet trade or being euthanized, it breaks my heart. So I'm really hoping that we can keep the 501c3 going in the right direction to help these animals out. And I just want to say thank you. And this is a quote from the late Steve Irwin: "We don't own the planet, we belong to it, we must share it with our wildlife." So I really feel about this with all animals. We have to make room for everybody. And as you know, the human population grows and urban sprawl grows, we're going to have to figure out how to make it work with these wildlife critters, because they share our space as well. So thank you. And lastly, if you want to connect with us, we're on Facebook and Instagram. I do have a TikTok account, but I'm too old, my son says, and I've been banned by my son from TikTok. So that's why. And then also, if you go to our website, You'll learn a lot more about the history of the population, and there's even some bios posted about some of the monkeys that we have out today. So if you guys have any questions, let me look in the chat, right?
Yeah, there's tons of good questions on there.
Okay, and Tarzan, that's great. Okay. Okay, so the question here is from Isabella. She's asking about their diet. So we asked about that too. The mangroves, it is a monotypic habitat, so there's only 3 types of plants available that they can eat from. However, they have access to lots of human food, and we really thought for sure that maybe their diet was playing into it, but the literature shows that animals that are provisioned like the vervets, they typically grow, the population grows, and they actually could speed up birth rates, and we're not seeing that. So for them to eat fruit and seeds, which is really primarily what people feed them, they get a lot of fresh fruit from the feeders, and they get peanuts. And then also, like I mentioned, they do love junk food, but primarily their diet seems to be pretty natural, but from a human provided perspective. As for natural foods, we've seen them eat ants, spiders, the curly-tailed lizards, some of the flowering, they're not artificial, but aesthetic plants that were planted by the businesses. They like to eat some of those seeds. So their diet is pretty broad. So that's why we think there might be something else, and it's from the biological perspective. That's what we're thinking. Okay, let's go down to the next one. Oh yes, you do. You did have the experience, the vervet experience in the house. Oh, that's so funny. Did you find accidental or intentional? Some of the wounds are from fighting, and that's just natural. And given that the vervet monkey runs on a really strict social hierarchy, and we did notice that when people feed them, it disrupts that system. And they're really good at payback. So for example, if you're a low-ranking individual and you get access to a yummy banana first before me, and I'm high-ranking, I will remember that and I will attack you later. So they like to use that as a way to regulate the social hierarchy. So those, I think, we get the wounds resulting from those aggressive social interactions, which I think would be accidental or intentional. I don't know. I don't think the monkeys intentionally mean to hurt them, but they have really long canines and they get pretty aggressive. As far as the accidental, those could be from some of the machinery, a lot of the heavy machinery or equipment they play on. Sometimes they might get caught up in that, which is something that we think might happen more frequently than we're aware of. Oh, let's see. Oh, you have videos. Yes, I would love to. Sonia, yeah, I haven't seen Tarzan in so long. I get videos of him. But I haven't seen him in person. I would love to see how he's doing. ZWF has monkeys and claims to be a sanctuary. I'm not familiar with that one. How often do they mate in the wild? That's a great question. So right now we're in the middle of breeding season, and baby season is our wet season. So typically the end of May, you'll start seeing births, and they give birth to one infant once a year, and their gestational period is about 5.5 months. So May or June, we'll start seeing some little ones pop out. Is it possible that there are more monkeys deeper in the woods of the area that you cannot count? That would be, for me, that would be a win. It would be nice to think there might be some other monkeys that are out there. We have gone through the port. We have access to that space. So we've explored those mangroves pretty well. And we've done a really intensive survey of the surrounding businesses that we think that monkeys would be when we haven't found any. But we do think that there are rogue males out there. So for example, like I mentioned, when the males reach sexual maturity at the age of 5, they leave. And sometimes the monkeys don't come back. So there might be those bachelor males roaming South Florida. So that's something that we're wanting to understand as well, as what happens to the monkeys when the males leave. The females never leave. So if a female disappears, something's going on. But when a male disperses out at the appropriate age and he doesn't come back, we're very curious as to where they go. Because we've actually had 3 return to the DANIA area, and I have GPS points for 2 of them. And the routes that they took are pretty remarkable. So they're pretty good at navigating the urban environment. Sonia, yeah, you can email them to me. Here, I'll put my email here if you just want to email it to the project, Sonia. And then that way I can just access them and download them. Okay. The zoo, I've never been to the Zoological Wildlife Foundation. Done safaris and for her animal. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant intention by humans. Oh, you know what? There was one group, the Park and Grow group, that the business is pretty open to letting folks come visit. So if you wanted to try to see them there, you could go over there. Matter of fact, I think they post their pictures on their social media and on their webpage if you're interested to go see them. The group that I work, primarily Park and Fly, is actually tucked away behind some of the businesses, and you have to have access to the business to get access to our space. So it's hard to get to them sometimes. Oh, thank you, Elise. Any other questions? Thank you, Fran. Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, I felt I was a little slow today. I'm tired, but I appreciate you guys coming, and I hope you guys found all the information helpful. Always such a short span, I always forget to share so many things. Alrighty. Any other questions or? Whoops.
That was awesome. Thank you so much again for doing this and for talking about these guys. We always see them at Snyder Park across the street.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's
they'll
Dennis.
sometimes come over and steal some of the diets that we have outside, but then they'll also sometimes be seen like on top of the enclosures, which is always fun. And then we just kind of hope that they don't get run over from crossing.
I know, that's
there.
what worries me. You know what's interesting? The ones that get hit by cars are the juveniles. And it's interesting to me that the males, like Dennis, you see, he's from the Park and Fly group and he left a couple of years ago. But when I start looking at the GPS points that these males take, it's remarkable that they don't get hit by cars. I find that phenomenal. So I don't know if that's like a learned thing that they figured out when not to run across the road. And yet the ones that have been hit by cars are the younger ones. And I just think that they haven't, this is all just speculating. I just think they haven't figured out yet how to look for cars, which I think would be indicative of a very self-aware, smart critter going on. So
thankfully we haven't seen any yet, so that's good. But yeah,
I know,
whenever we
fingers
cross
crossed,
over,
right?
we kind of just make sure they're not on the fence, and the few times they are, we kind of just like make sure they go back into the Snyder Park area, so that way they don't have to you know, be at risk with those cars. But again,
Yeah.
super grateful for you taking the time to talk about this. And again, I will post this on our YouTube for those who missed it, or those who want to, you know, listen to it again and things like that.
Alrighty, well, thank you guys so much. And, you know, follow us on social media, and I'll post all of our updates with the enclosure and getting things sorted out for them as we move forward.